Well, how would you like to hunt man-eating tigers from atop an elephant? Why did I bring this up? Because I rediscovered an old video review of an unusual firearm that I came across about, I don't know, 8 years ago, perhaps. It's called a Howdah pistol, and it's a side-by-side double-barrel shotgun rifle. Now, sawed-off shotguns aren't legal in the States anymore, but rifles, yeah, that's a pistol. So there is an option. It's the 45 Colt rifle side-by-side that also can take a 410 shot shell. This is really an unusual piece, and it was inspired by the original Howdah elephant self-defense guns used in hunting man-eating tigers in India way back when. So if this sounds all a little bit what? Let me explain. Back when the Brits had a colony in India, they were called upon to help with the villagers who were being terrorized by these man-eating tigers and leopards to a large degree as well. And this was not just a sometimes thing. This was kind of standard procedure over there. Some of these tigers had upwards of 400 victims. And the poor peasants in these little villages had nothing to protect themselves with except for masks that they wore on the backs of their heads so that they would confuse the tiger. They would think that they're looking at them as they walk back to the village from working in their fields, and a tiger was stalking them. If he saw that human face looking at him, he might pause and not attack, waiting for a better opportunity. So that's not much of a defense against a tiger. But the other thing they had, of course, were sticks and little farm implements, hoes and rakes and spears probably, but didn't do much good. So the British authorities, of course, had firearms, and they would be called upon to take out these tigers. And the most famous of these was Patterson, and he wrote some books about it, the man-eating tigers of India and stuff. Fascinating reading. But prior to him coming on with modern rifles, in the early days, they would get on top of elephants. Of course, the Indians had trained elephants for ages and ages. They did lots of work with them. They'd lift big, heavy logs and all this stuff, so that they were pretty well domesticated and well trained. The hunters or the shooters rode in a basket atop the elephant called a howdah. And from that elevated position, they could see down into the dense brush and grass in which the tiger was probably hiding. But sometimes the tiger would attack. If he was surrounded by several of these elephants and shooters, he might just decide to climb an elephant and get at the basket. So for the last line of defense, they had a short, sawed-off shotgun that they called a Howdah pistol. And this is where the whole idea of the gun that I reviewed came from. It was a Howdah. Now, there's more history to this. In the 1920s into the 30s, back in the crime era, with prohibition and all, there were lots of criminals stopping trucks on the highway and stealing their illegal whiskey, I suppose, or legitimate goods. But there were just a lot of highway crime because I think this was before the highway patrol came into being. So the truckers wanted a convenient tool, and rather than learn and practice with a handgun, they just found it a lot easier to use a shotgun, but they're pretty unwieldy in the cab of a truck, so they cut the buttstock off and they cut the barrels down, and back in those days, this was all legal, and they had sawed-off guns. Ithaca started to build a factory double-barrel 20-gauge shotgun they called the Auto and Burglar. And that pretty much tells you what it was used for. You would defend yourself in your automobile or your truck with this convenient little short shotgun, or in the home or your business. You didn't have to be a professional with a lot of training because it was a shotgun. Well, those became kind of quasi-illegal after the federal firearms laws were passed in the 1930s. So Ithaca stopped making them. And they're not legal now because they're classified as a sawed-off shotgun. But if you make one with a rifle barrel for a rifle cartridge, it would be a pistol. And this is what Pedersoli did. They make one for the 45 long Colt, but the chamber is sufficiently long to take a 3-inch 410 shot shell. Because 410 isn't a gauge, it's a caliber. .41. It will fit and fire in this same chamber. So you've got a versatile little side-by-side short pistol that will fire 45 caliber slugs in the 45 Colt format or the 410. So you're back to sort of an auto and burglar version of the Howdah gun. This is what it's all about. I heard about this crazy thing and saw one at the SHOT Show and decided it would be fun to do a video. And that's what this video is about. I don't remember exactly how it went. It's been so long, but I thought we would look through it and I'll make some comments as we go. And we'll just learn about this double barrel Howdah gun and its history. So let's just launch this thing and see what it looks like. There's the shot shells. Oh, I like the music we chose. Yikes. I didn't realize you could get a spinning action from a soda bottle when you filled it full of shot pellet holes. See, that right there shows you this is an extractor. It's not an ejector. Keeps the cost down, but it was the old traditional technique. You had lifters that would partially take the cartridge out and then you pulled them out one by one. Yeah, those were the 45 Colt slugs.
In the roaring 20s, there were no highway patrolmen. If you traveled from city to city, there was no protection. And there were highwaymen out to steal your goods and maybe steal you. What was a possible solution? This, a sawed-off shotgun made by Ithaca. And this was effective protection because it was small, compact. You could carry it in your truck and whip it out while you sat there and discourage anybody from coming closer if you had to. Well, in 1934, the U.S. federal government passed a law called the National Firearms Act that made this susceptible to a $200 tax. $40 gun, $200 tax ban back in those days, that added up to a lot of money. So Ithaca stopped making these and they became collector items. They're worth a lot of money these days, but this one is new. Built by Pedersoli in Italy, imported by the Italian Firearms Group right here in Amarillo, Texas, and it's chambered for the 45 Colt. It has a rifled barrel, but the chambers are long enough you can shoot 410 shells in it. So it's a great protection gun. But what I'm wondering is if it might not also double for a small game gun. Pretty unusual in its own right. Let's just see what it can do.
Now, this kind of puzzled me. Would it really be an effective small game option? Cottontails, any smaller animals like that. Sort of a meat pot gun, something you'd keep around camp or in the back of the truck. And when the opportunity presented itself, you could very quickly and conveniently take this out and bag supper. But how effective would it be with no buttstock, no cheek control on a comb to swing a shotgun? How do you aim this thing? So let's just find out how it handled.
The Pedersoli Howdah is a box lock action, side-by-side, double-barrel pistol with 10.25-inch rifled barrels chambered for the 45 Colt cartridge. It is also designed to handle 410 shot shell. The rear sight flips up and down. The front is a gold bead. All right, this Howdah is an excellent self-defense gun from what we've seen on those exploding targets. Let's try some 7.5 birdshot in this 410. And at 15 yards, see if it's adequate for shooting a cottontail. And the head on that target's about the size of a cottontail, especially that middle circle right there. So let's just see what this thing will do. Well, sure wiggled it. Let's go find out if there's any holes in it. Okay. Well, that looks like we'd probably take a cottontail at 15 yards. You know, this is about a 4-inch circle here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It's about a dozen shots in there. Of course, I shot it twice, but you can figure 6 in each one. You're going to pick off a cottontail at about 15 yards. That's where I was standing. So I think this could do the job on a cottontail rabbit.
Now, that's a standing cottontail, which I think is legitimate for a meat gun. You're not going out for sport and you're not going to be swinging to shoot, although I don't know. I suspect you could learn to shoot. I mean, there are handgunners who can shoot flying targets. It takes a lot of practice. But as I said earlier, with a shotgun, you are essentially lining the gun up with where you look. There's no sights on it. And you just cheek that gun, and when you look and swing, the barrels are pointing where you're looking. You don't get that with a pistol like this. So I imagine it would be quite difficult to swing and hit your targets. Obviously, when I was aiming this, I was aiming it. It had that flip-up sight, and that's what I was using to line things up because I didn't have that connection with the buttstock and the comb on my cheek. But notice the pattern is pretty wide here. Even though I've got, I think, enough pellets in there to take the game, boy, at 15 yards, you're not used to seeing a pattern that wide. Why is it so wide? Well, remember, this is a rifled barrels for the 45 Colt. You're not going to have any kind of a choke in there. So this is a true cylinder bore for a shotgun perspective, and you're going to have a wide pattern. Plus, it's only a 10.5-inch barrel. So you're going to be spreading that pattern out pretty quickly.
It'd be interesting to try a few more shot sizes, but that's 7.5. And if you look at the backside, it's a big, wide pattern. It's putting a lot of hurt on anything larger. But of course, a small target, you need to keep them pretty close. Not bad for a short, little 9.5-inch barrel. Well,
yeah, I had my barrel length wrong there. It was a 10.5-inch barrel. I don't always remember all the details when I'm doing these videos.
Shotgun seems to work pretty well. Let's try it with some Spear Gold Dots here. 45 Colt, 15 yards. We're going to try to shoot for about the center of the square. I'm not real sure how to hold this for fine or heavy beat because I've never shot it before, but hey, that's pretty centered right there. Whoa.
Now you can see the recoil is not bad at all. I wasn't sure how this thing was going to recoil, but heck, there wasn't even much muzzle flip on this thing, so it was really pretty easy to control. And if you noticed in the shot that showed the pistol grip, there's a little bit of a piece of wood, an ear sticking out to keep your hand from sliding up on the grip.
Whoa, that's pretty good. That looks like about 2.5 inches apart. Pretty impressive. Well, there you go. Look at that group. 45 Colt, 15 yards. Pretty big sights on that little gun. That's pretty impressive, especially for a side-by-side double barrel. You know, you have to regulate those things. It takes a lot of time and effort to do it, but I might take a look at that Howdah if I were looking for a gun that I wanted to use for protection and maybe keep around camp and back of the rig, pot some game. It's pretty versatile.
You know, as close as those two are to my aim point and to one another, I think a guy could take small game with the 45 too. You do have the sights on it, a little bit of practice. I think you could do pretty well. But again, 15 yards, you're pretty darned close. But it's kind of a tool for when opportunity presents itself.
It's pretty versatile. Italian Firearms Group's bringing it in. It's 45 Colt 410 double barrel pistol.
Let's try some defense loads now. This is the Hornady Critical Defense. It shoots a 41 caliber slug, followed by a couple of 35 caliber lead balls. Good old buckshot, and that was sort of a classic back in the day. We'll see if the bad guy likes the taste of this. Oh, yeah, I don't think so. Dead center. My golly.
Hey, look, that's pretty effective. I think these are the 41 caliber slugs right here. These are the balls. So that would have been the good old buckshot back in the day. Still a pretty effective way to defend yourself.
Boy, you can see from that spread and the size of those holes, this would be a pretty effective self-defense. And you could use that on small game as well. The pattern was pretty close. You know, they're right in there. It really surprised me. Looking at it now, I didn't even remember that it shot that well. That's pretty impressive stuff. 15 yards, that's pretty long for a self-defense. Most of that stuff's going to happen more like 10 feet. So you're going to be putting some hurt on a target.
Pretty impressive little piece of work here. An Ithaca shotgun brought back to life as a rifle, and it's a pistol. If you're looking for a defense pistol, Pedersoli's Howdah replica is a pretty good bet. Check out Italian Firearms Group in Amarillo, Texas to see if they might have a model like this for you to check out. It'd be a fun little gun to have. Self-defense and some small game at close yards. Hey, if you want more information on shooting, guns, ammo, optics, and everything and anything to do with the outdoors, visit RonSpomerOutdoors.com. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, that reminds me, the last couple of years I've gone to the SHOT Show, and the booth, the Pedersoli booth where the Italian Firearms Group is displaying their wares, I noticed that they've got more versions of this. It's still a 445 rifle or pistol, rifled barrel, and 410. They can't do legally, I think, the 20 gauge. But they not only make it in this model, but they've got one that's stainless synthetic for Alaska. I think this thing has become so popular that people are picking it up just for that use I mentioned, carrying it in their truck, keeping it in camp, kind of a rough and tumble general purpose tool. So they've got that stainless synthetic, which would obviously be a lot easier to maintain. But then they've also gone back with a little bit of nostalgia and made a model with external hammers. It looks like a cap lock. It still is firing 45 Colts and 410s, but they've got the hammers on the outside. So it looks like an older version of a classic cap lock shotgun. So apparently with all those varieties out there and those different versions, there are a lot of folks that are interested in this. If you want to check out an unusual firearm, this is one you might want to look at. I still am not convinced it's all that practical, but there are a lot of folks who just enjoy shooting unusual firearms, and this is certainly one of them, with a long history harking back to the bad old days of man-eating tigers in India. So if you get one, write back and let me know how well it works for you and what practical uses you put it to. Can you use it, for instance, on running game and perhaps even flying? That to me seems like it would be pretty challenging without the buttstock and comb connection to get your eye lined up with the barrels. Would be tough. But I think maybe someday I want to get a hold of one of these, get some clay targets out and see what I can do. It'd be pretty fun. Hey, hope you enjoyed this little look back on an old video. And as I said, if you get one of these or have one of these, let me know how it's worked for you, what kind of hunting you've been able to do with it. Until next time, this is Ron Spomer wishing you all the best on Honest and Shoot Straight.